DG Elijah Cross stood handcuffed beside his wrecked black Escalade, blood streaking the windshield, accused of stealing the luxury car registered in his name. Two white officers grinned as if justice were a joke. He'd just left court, 12 hours deep into an embezzlement trial, only to be profiled for driving while black. Despite showing ID and registration, they refused to look. They'd already decided who he was. But Elijah isn't backing down. Isn't. Want to see how deep this rabbit hole goes? Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and buckle up, because what happens next will shake you to the core. Elijah Cross never thought a midnight knock would splinter his world. But when the pounding rattled his East Atlanta townhouse and voices barked his name like a warrant, he knew. It wasn't over. Not after the roadside stop, not after being falsely accused of stealing his own Escalade. This was bigger, deeper. The stench of racism wasn't a passing storm. It was the air he breathed. Elijah, once revered in a black robe behind the bench, a judge known for exposing corrupt cops, now stood at the eye of a hurricane designed to crush him. He opened the door slow, deliberate, shoulders squared, and found 6 officers in tactical gear staring back at him, guns drawn, jaws locked. "Hands where we can see 'em," the lead snapped. "What's this about?" Elijah asked, voice calm but clipped, heart thudding like a drum line. "Search warrant. Narcotics." Narcotics? He barely had aspirin in the medicine cabinet. They shoved past him, boots stomping across hardwood, flashlights slicing through shadows. His daughter, Amira, just 13, peeked from behind the stairs, her wide eyes mirroring the terror Elijah had fought his whole life to shield her from. "Don't move," a cop barked, aiming his rifle at her. Elijah lunged, instinct overriding reason. "She's a child!" Where they pinned him, face to the floor, cold steel on his wrists, the floorboard pressing a cruel mark across his cheek. Minutes later, a young cop hollered from the garage. "Found it!" The words echoed like gunshots, a bag of white powder held high like a trophy. Elijah's stomach dropped. He didn't need a test to know it was planted. Rage and despair surged, but he stayed silent as they dragged him out, neighbors watching behind trembling blinds, cell phones raised like digital nooses, mugshots, headlines. Judge busted in cocaine scandal. They buried the body cam footage of the Escalade stop, erased his protests, replaced his truth with their fiction. Locked in a holding cell that reeked of bleach and rust, Elijah replayed every second. The stop, the smirks, the planted drugs. This wasn't about law. It was retaliation. For every bad cop he benched. Every ruling that cost them power. A war he didn't start, but would damn sure finish. The next morning, his attorney Malachi stormed the station. Sharp suit, sharper tongue. "You screwed up," he told the sergeant. "Your chain of custody's full of holes. We're filing for dismissal." But the media had already tried Elijah. Black man, black Escalade, cocaine, the trifecta. Released on bail, he returned home to shattered glass, Amira's window smashed in, her room ransacked. The message was clear. "We know where she sleeps." Fear curdled in his gut, but Elijah refused to flinch. He didn't rise from South Side poverty to a judge's seat by backing down. He called a press conference. Cameras rolled as he stepped to the mic, his voice a storm. "This isn't about drugs. This is about justice, twisted, corrupted, weaponized. They didn't just come for me. They came for my child, and I won't let it stand." The footage went viral. Support poured in. Activists rallied. But so did the opposition. That night, a brick crashed through the living room window, spray painted with the word traitor in red. Amira screamed, clinging to his leg as sirens wailed, too late to matter. Elijah's hands trembled as he dialed Malachi. "They want me gone," he said. "Then we give them something they can't erase," Malachi replied. They dug in, uncovered a digital trail, officer text threads bragging about neutralizing the judge, precinct footage showing a cop sneaking into Elijah's garage hours before the raid. They filed for suppression. At the emergency hearing, Elijah stood tall, dark suit pressed, eyes blazing as he told the courtroom, "I've spent my life defending the law. Now I stand as proof that even the law can be poisoned." The judge ruled in his favor. Evidence dismissed. Case dropped. But victory was fleeting. The next morning, news broke that Elijah had once been arrested at 15 for defending his mother during a robbery. A sealed juvenile record leaked. The headlines screamed violent past. It was calculated, surgical, a slow public execution. They wanted the robe, the respect, the silence. But Elijah wasn't silent. He released the real story, voice trembling as he spoke to the camera. "They want to shame me for surviving? I'll shame them for trying to kill truth." The response was thunderous. Students, activists, mothers with kids just like Amira flooded social media with stories of their own. Planted drugs, dirty stops, systemic abuse. A movement ignited. But so did their enemies. One night, on his way home, Elijah's brakes failed. The mechanic later found his lines cut. 2 days later, Malachi was nearly run off the road. The war had crossed the courtroom. Still, Elijah kept moving. He filed a federal suit against the department. He spoke at rallies. He taught Amira how to spot tails. Then came the final blow. One night, walking Amira to school, a masked figure jumped from a car, knife flashing. Elijah threw himself in front of her. The blade cut across his ribs, shallow but sharp. Sirens screamed as the attacker fled. At the hospital, Amira held his hand, whispering, "Don't give up, Daddy." He wouldn't. Not now. Not ever. Weeks later, justice arrived, this time in the form of leaked precinct audio, posted anonymously. A familiar voice, the arresting officer. "The judge? Yeah, we're setting him up. Make it clean." The FBI launched an investigation. Arrests followed. Elijah's name, once dragged through mud, now shown in headlines. Judge vindicated, truth exposed. But the real win wasn't the cleared record, or even the money from the lawsuit. It was walking Amira to school again, unafraid. Her fingers looped through his, her smile back, her childhood safe. For now. Want to know how Elijah flips the system on its head and what he uncovers next? Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and stay locked in, because the war may be ending. But the truth is just beginning. Elijah Cross stood at the edge of his life, watching it unravel thread by thread, faster than he could grasp. And every thread felt like flesh being torn from bone. His reputation, his legacy, his peace, all shredded in a matter of days. The badge hadn't protected him. The robe didn't shield him. And now the system he'd spent decades upholding had turned on him with a cruelty so intimate, it felt almost personal. What started with a simple traffic stop, the kind that should have lasted 5 minutes, spiraled into a war designed to break him. He remembered the cold metal of the handcuffs, remembered how Officer Barrett smirked like a wolf that had cornered its prey. "This your car?" he'd asked, as if Elijah hadn't handed over registration, ID, and a judge's badge. As if being black and driving an Escalade was a crime in itself. Elijah had complied. voice calm, movements slow, hands visible. He knew the script, but Barrett and his partner Hicks weren't there for law. They were there for a performance, a message. The cuffs clicked, the sirens wailed, and suddenly Elijah Cross, Superior Court Judge of Fulton County, was on the hood of his own car, in his own neighborhood, with his face pressed to the metal like any nameless mugshot on a cold booking screen. It should have ended there. But this wasn't about a traffic stop. It never was. The next morning, as his face bled across the local news under the banner, Judge Cross accused of auto theft, the real game began. Anonymous sources leaked that drugs were found in his car. Cocaine, sealed in a bag tucked neatly behind the passenger seat. The headlines didn't question the logic. A sitting judge caught with an untraceable brick of cocaine? The media didn't flinch. They just ran the story. Social media ignited. From judge to junkie trended for 6 straight hours. Elijah's inbox flooded with death threats, racist slurs, even threats toward his teenage son, Caleb, who'd already been suspended twice that semester for attitude problems, and now walked through his school hallways with a target on his back. His wife, Lena, begged him to stay inside. "They're watching us, Eli, from the street, the woods, the sky. I feel it." And she was right. Unmarked cars circled their block like vultures. Helicopters hovered a little too long over the roof at night. Their mailbox was stuffed with hate mail, some handwritten in jagged, blood-red ink. "Get out of our town, ghetto judge." One day, a burning cross appeared in their yard, flames twisting high enough to kiss the porch roof. Elijah had to beat it down with his bare hands, the embers searing holes through his robe. That robe, once a symbol of dignity, now hung charred and limp in the hallway closet, reeking of gasoline and hate. He fought back in court, tried to stay focused. But how could he focus when every courtroom whisper was a dagger, when attorneys he'd mentored avoided eye contact, when even his clerk, bright, loyal Tiana, asked to be reassigned for her mental health? The silence hurt more than the slander. It was the silence that screamed betrayal. Malachi, his oldest friend and lawyer, told him, "They're circling like it's feeding time." They filed a motion to suppress the evidence, arguing no chain of custody, no probable cause. The judge, once Elijah's colleague, delayed the hearing twice, then denied the motion without explanation. "Systems closing ranks," Malachi whispered. "They want you buried, not vindicated." The stress cracked Elijah's sleep. Nightmares gripped him like a drowning man gasping for air. He'd jolt awake, soaked in sweat, convinced someone was in the room, watching. One night, he found Lena sitting on the kitchen floor in tears, clutching Caleb's hoodie to her chest. "He's not safe here," she cried. "None of us are." She left the next morning, took Caleb and drove to her sister's house, 3 states away. Elijah kissed her hand as she pulled away. "Don't come back until this is over." But what if it never was? He stood alone in the wreckage of his life. The house felt like a mausoleum. Each room echoed with memories he was now too broken to revisit. His fridge was empty. The power flickered, and still the media came, cameras flashing like lightning in his face. "Have you resigned yet, Judge Cross? What do you say to the allegations? Are you addicted?" He said nothing. Not because he had no answers, but because no one wanted the truth. Then, just when it seemed the worst had come, the state bar sent a letter. An official investigation had been launched into his past rulings. Accusations of bias, misconduct, overreach. Cases he'd ruled by the book were now twisted into weapons against him. And still, he stood. Hollow, but standing. Until the envelope came, plain, white. No return address. Inside, A photo, grainy, black and white. Caleb, walking to school, a red X drawn over his chest. Elijah fell to his knees. The scream never left his throat. Malachi moved fast, filed emergency motions, called in favors from every contact they still had. He urged Elijah to leave town. Just for a while, go underground. But Elijah refused. I ran from nothing growing up. I'm not starting now. He started documenting everything, every threat, every lie, every whisper. He set up cameras around his property, slept with the lights on, ate canned beans from a bunker he'd made in his garage. He kept a journal, writing notes to Caleb, to Lena, to the man he used to be. They want me afraid. They want me erased. But I will not be invisible. Then came the second arrest. This time, the charge was obstruction. Body cam footage allegedly showed Elijah interfering with an officer's duties during the night of the traffic stop. But the footage was doctored, clipped to remove context. He flashed his badge to intimidate, the report said. Elijah laughed, a brittle, broken sound that didn't reach his eyes. They were building a coffin of lies around him, one nail at a time. When he appeared in court for that charge, no one sat beside him, not a single friend. Not a colleague, just empty pews and eyes that looked through him. But they couldn't stop the truth from leaking. A whistleblower from inside the department, a young black officer named Theo, delivered a flash drive to Malachi. They're framing him, Theo said, from the top down. The drive contained texts, emails, internal memos. Keep pressure on Cross. Make it stick. No one will believe a black judge over a white badge. The smoking gun. They released it anonymously. The story went national. Protests erupted. Civil rights leaders marched on City Hall, chanting Elijah's name. This is not just about one judge. This is about all of us. The governor issued a public statement. The FBI opened a probe. And for the first time in weeks, Elijah felt the air shift. Slightly, like a door opening just wide enough to let hope in. But it came at a cost. Theo was fired within 24 hours. Later that night, his apartment burned to the ground. They never found his body. Just charred remains and a broken phone with Elijah's name still visible in a text. They're coming for me next. Elijah wept for him, for all the others silenced before their truth could breathe. He stood at Theo's ashes and swore, "Your voice will never be erased." Days later, Elijah's charges were dismissed. The department scrambled, citing new evidence. The press pivoted. Wronged Judge Cross vindicated in shocking racism scandal. But the damage was done. He returned home to an empty house, mail piled like confessions on the floor. His robe, his bench, his courtroom? Gone. Resigned voluntarily, the papers said. He never even got a hearing. Still, he stood. He rebuilt, started teaching law at a local college, mentored black youth about their rights, about power, about the price of survival. Lena and Caleb returned. Slowly, carefully, trusting time more than promises. He cooked again, laughed again, but some nights he still jolted awake, reaching for a robe he no longer wore. Still, when asked if he regretted it, Elijah only said, "Regret is for those who didn't fight." And when the cameras returned one last time, this time to honor him at a civil rights gala, he stepped to the mic, eyes glinting under stage lights, and said, They tried to erase me, but every lie they used to silence me became a brick I used to rebuild. I am still here, and I will not be quiet. Please like and subscribe to the channel to know more about this story. They called her Harper Sloan on the news, but to herself, she still whispered the name in pieces. Harper the daughter, Harper the sister, Harper the survivor, Harper the accused. Once a top forensic auditor for the city's anti-corruption unit, she now stood with trembling hands pressed to a courtroom table, her heart pounding so hard it drowned out the murmurs behind her. Her brown eyes, ringed with sleepless shadows, scanned the crowd, each face a blade, a question, a lie. Her reputation had been dragged through mud so thick, her voice felt like a whisper underwater. The judge hadn't arrived yet, and neither had the prosecutors, but she could already feel the weight of it, what it meant to be a black woman standing alone in a room built to devour people like her. Harper didn't just stumble into trouble. She was pushed, hard, set up to take the fall for something she'd spent years fighting against. She'd uncovered a multi-million-dollar embezzlement ring within the mayor's office, evidence that reached high, touched names too polished to imagine dirty, and when she brought it to her supervisor, he smiled, told her to be careful, then disappeared. 3 weeks later, a tipster claimed Harper had moved funds. Harper had scrubbed logs. Harper had set it all up. Her office was raided, her emails twisted. Her name, once synonymous with integrity, became poison. And just like that, she was thrown into the teeth of the system she thought she understood. You ever felt like the ground was breathing, waiting to swallow you whole? That was how Harper felt, walking through the courthouse each day, heels echoing like countdowns, guards eyeing her like she was radioactive, people she used to mentor crossing streets to avoid her. And still, she showed up, even after the death threats. Even after her landlord accidentally lost her rent deposit and gave her 10 days to vacate. Even after she walked into her car and found a dead pigeon on the hood, its wings soaked in red dye. A note pinned to its chest that read, "Silence is survival." Even then, she walked into that courtroom like it was a battlefield, one she'd rather die on than back down from. Because that's what courage looks like sometimes. It's not fire and speeches. Sometimes it's showing up in the clothes you wore yesterday because your storage unit was broken into and your last clean suit was shredded. Sometimes it's looking your lawyer in the eye even when he says, "The best I can do is 5 years probation if you plead guilty." And not blinking, not begging, just saying, "No." Because pleading guilty would mean admitting to something you didn't do. And Harper refused to let their lies write the last chapter of her life. But that strength came at a cost. The nights were the worst. She slept on a friend's couch now, when she could sleep. Most of the time she lay there staring at the ceiling fan, remembering every face she trusted that vanished the moment her name made headlines. Remembering her baby brother Cameron, the way his voice cracked over the phone when he asked, "You didn't really do this, did you, Harp?" Remembering her mother's voice trembling on voicemail, praying, "Just tell the truth, baby." Not realizing Harper was. The truth was all she had. But when the world believes the lie louder than you can shout the truth, the silence becomes deafening. There were moments she almost gave in, when the judge stared her down like a chess piece already checkmated, when she found out her friend was pressured to stop letting her sleep on the couch for safety reasons, when she overheard the jurors whispering her name with disgust, unaware their mics were still hot. Harper was strong, but she was human. And when she walked into a diner one night and the waiter slipped her a receipt that said, "Get out, liar," she nearly lost it, nearly screamed, nearly cried. But instead she stood, left, and went back to the courthouse the next morning like the warrior she never wanted to be, but had no choice but to become. Because someone had to expose this. Someone had to fight. She had proof. A flash drive, tucked away inside a safe deposit box, containing backups of the original audit trail. Unedited, unaltered, untouched, but revealing it too soon would get it buried. Just like her name. So she waited. Timed it. Knew if she leaked it before trial, they'd cry forgery. So she let the pressure build. Let them believe they'd won. Let the courtroom swell with smugness and cameras and whispers that Harper Sloan was done. And then, on the day of closing arguments, she rose. Calm. Poised. Her lawyer trembling beside her. "I'd like to address the court," she said. Her voice, soft but unwavering, sliced through the air like glass. The judge hesitated. The prosecution smirked. "You have 5 minutes." And in 5 minutes, Harper cracked the walls. She pulled the drive from her coat pocket like a weapon forged in silence. Pressed play on a file labeled Integrity Wa1. The room watched in stunned silence as the screen filled with footage. Corrupt officials joking about fund transfers, digital records tracing every dollar back to names the city trusted. Not her. Them. Her voice trembled only once, when she said, "I didn't come here to win. I came here to prove that truth can survive a lie that's shouted long enough." The courtroom erupted. The judge called for order, but it was too late. The genie was out. Charges dropped. Investigation reopened. The mayor's office burned with scandal. And Harper? Harper walked out the front doors of that courthouse to a street full of silence. Not the silence of judgment, but the silence of witnessing. Of people seeing her. Truly seeing her. Maybe for the first time. But don't think that was the end. No apology from the city. No financial settlement. No letter of public vindication. Just silence. And a clearing of her record that didn't erase the damage done. Her bank account still had $48. Her job wasn't coming back. Her landlord still hadn't called. But she stood free. Broke. Exhausted. But free. And that night, when she finally slept, she dreamed not of courtrooms or headlines, but of peace. So if you're hearing this, if you're watching her story, don't scroll past. Don't forget her name. Harper Sloan. Because this system tried to bury her, but she was a seed, and she bloomed. If you felt her fight, if you believe her truth, hit that like button right now. Not just for her, but for every woman who's ever been told to stay quiet. Every black whistleblower who was framed for daring to speak. Every soul who stood alone and still found the strength to stand taller. Like if you believe the world needs to hear more stories like Harper's. Like if you would have stood beside her in that courtroom. And subscribe if you're ready to ride with her for what comes next. Because Harper's not done. She's just getting started. No one knew what Jordan Maddox had done. Not really. The rumors twisted through the city like smoke, but the truth was locked behind his clenched jaw, his 1,000-yard stare, and the silence he wore like armor. Some said he stole from the mayor's private accounts. Others whispered he hacked into the police union's cloud and downloaded evidence that could crumble entire precincts. A few swore he'd gone rogue after his sister vanished from a foster home in Eastside, and he blamed the entire city for it. But only Jordan knew what really happened. Only Jordan knew the files hidden behind 7 layers of encrypted code, buried deep in a hidden server, locked behind a passphrase that only he remembered. A phrase tied to a moment so painful, so raw, it made his chest ache every time he whispered it to himself in the dark. That phrase held the weight of what he'd uncovered. And if it ever got out, it would not just shatter careers, it would start fires. Real ones. Cities burn before truth does kind of fires. They'd already tried to silence him once. He remembered the unmarked black van that screeched up beside him as he left the corner store at midnight. The hands. The bag over his head. The fists. Surgical, practiced, designed to bruise but not break. A warning, not a kill. They wanted him scared, not silenced, not yet, not before they knew what he knew. And Jordan? He gave them nothing. Not the password, not the location, not a name. Just silence, spit, and a stare that said, "Try again." They dumped him near the river, bloodied and barefoot, his ribs cracked, phone destroyed, his memory card missing. That alone confirmed their fear. They knew what he had, but not how much. Not everything. And here's the thing. Jordan hadn't started this war. He wasn't an activist. He wasn't some rebel hero with a manifesto. He was a systems analyst for the city's public records office, the kind of guy people overlooked, until one night, a data corruption error triggered a full server audit, and Jordan found a file he was never meant to see, flagged as inactive, but pulsing like a trap door. Out of curiosity, he clicked it, then froze. Inside were 117 separate video files, body cam footage, police testimonies, redacted internal affairs memos, and one folder titled, "Do Not Purge." Inside that were the unedited tapes, footage of unlawful shootings, money being exchanged, officers laughing over cigars as they erased arrest records. One video in particular made his breath catch. An officer driving away from a foster home. The same home where his little sister, Maya, was last seen before she vanished in 2018. He watched the officer pop the trunk, stare into it, then slam it shut and drive off. No badge number visible. But Jordan recognized the tattoo peeking out from under the man's sleeve. A coiled serpent. It haunted him. And in that moment, Jordan's life cracked in two. Before, employee, quiet, forgettable. After, haunted, hunted, unstoppable. He backed up the footage. All of it. Several copies. Spread across burner drives hidden in locked boxes around the city. He created aliases, used VPNs from public libraries and laundromats. Never the same place twice. He wiped his devices weekly, stopped using credit cards, ditched his apartment, lived out of a storage unit. Every moment calculated, every breath taken with the knowledge that someone, somewhere, was watching him. He didn't know who yet, but the deeper he went, the more eyes he felt. The city turned on him fast. First, he was on leave. Then his face leaked to the press, tagged as wanted for cyber theft. The term was vague, intentional, enough to make people suspicious, but not enough to let him defend himself. His bank account froze. Friends vanished. One even called him crying, saying 2 detectives showed up at her door, asking questions about whether Jordan ever talked about anti-government sentiment. Jordan wanted to scream. He'd never cared about politics, never posted a single tweet about police. He'd just stumbled into the truth. And now, he was paying for it. The risks got bolder. Someone followed him to the shelter he sometimes slept at, left a burner phone under his cot. It rang once. He answered. A deep voice. "You're not bulletproof." Then static. Then silence. That same night, the shelter mysteriously caught fire. No casualties. Just a warning. A fire set not to kill, but to erase a trail. His. He knew the clock was ticking, but he also knew he couldn't run forever. He had to do something. But what? And that's where the real mystery begins. Because Jordan didn't leak the files. Not yet. He did something else, something riskier. He sent a message to an old contact, Lena, a whistleblower lawyer who owed him a favor from years back. The message read only, "Watch this space. 48 hours. It ends." Then he vanished again. And when the clock hit 0, every major city department website glitched for exactly 67 seconds. Just enough time to flash a message in red block letters across their homepages. "We know what you buried." No name, no demands. Just a warning. The system shivered. Now here's where people start asking questions, where you start wondering. Because after that, silence. Jordan wasn't seen for 3 days. Then, out of nowhere, a low-level tech reporter received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a hard drive labeled The Ledger. He plugged it in. Within seconds, he realized what he was holding. Everything. Full confessionals, names, payouts, orders from the top, hidden settlements, murder cover-ups. It was the skeleton of a system that claimed to protect, but only devoured. He leaked it anonymously. Of course. Said it came from a source known only as Blackout. Jordan hasn't confirmed that's him. But if you were there, if you followed every breadcrumb, you'd know. It had his fingerprints, his code, his fury. But also, his silence. He never stepped forward, never claimed credit, never tried to be the hero. And maybe that's what makes him so intriguing. The city wants a villain, a name to drag, but all they have is smoke. And that's why we're telling you this now. Because somewhere out there, Jordan Maddox is still walking, still watching, still carrying truths too dangerous to bury. And maybe he's tired. Maybe he's broken. Maybe he's moments away from giving up. But maybe, just maybe, he's waiting to see if anyone out here still believes in what he did. If anyone has the courage to say, "You did the right thing," even when no one else would. Because risking your life to expose corruption? That's not just a choice, it's a sacrifice. So if you're listening to this, if you're hearing his story and feeling the weight of what he risked, drop a comment. Tell Jordan he's not alone. Let him know that even in the shadows, he's still seen. Drop we see. You Jordan in the comments. Hit that like button right now if you think the truth should never come at this high a cost. Because Jordan's story isn't over, and the people he exposed, they're still out there. So what do you think Jordan did next? Go underground for good? Prepare for one final blow to the system? Or is he watching from the crowd, hood up, heart racing, waiting for someone else to pick up the torch? Comment your theory below. And if you believe one person can still change everything, like to support Jordan Maddox. Let's show him his risks weren't in vain. They said Noelle Alvarez just snapped, that she went off the rails, took justice into her own hands. But no one ever asked what broke her. No one asked about the night she stood on the third-floor landing of her crumbling apartment complex, watching her younger brother Mateo get slammed to the pavement by 2 cops in riot gear who never even announced themselves. No one asked about the blood in his mouth when she ran screaming toward him, or how they pulled her back by the hair, calling her a mouthy little thing as they cuffed her too, for obstructing an arrest. No one asked why Mateo stopped speaking after that. He just stared at walls for days, eyes hollow. Noelle was 26, a community caseworker with a voice too loud and a heart too soft for the city she lived in. She spent her days helping families buried in poverty and her nights filling out paperwork no one ever read. She was patient. She believed in systems. Until those systems left her brother broken. Until the officers who'd brutalized him were cleared without so much as a slap on the wrist. Until she filed complaints that vanished like smoke. made phone calls that echoed into silence, and cried in parking lots with her head against the steering wheel, whispering, "Please, somebody help us." But nobody came. The day she changed was the day Matteo tried to take his own life. She found him in the bathtub, wrists slit, lips blue. She screamed so loud her neighbor kicked in the door. The paramedics saved him, but something inside her died. That night, sitting beside his hospital bed, holding his cold hand, she whispered, "I won't let them bury us." And she meant it. What followed wasn't rage. It was resolve. Noelle didn't burn anything down. She didn't shout into cameras or rally crowds. She got quiet, sharp. She pulled every file she'd ever submitted, every name, every detail, dates, times, inconsistencies. She dug deeper, requested body cam footage, tracked badge numbers, connected dots. She realized Matteo wasn't the first, not by far. There were patterns, reports rewritten, witnesses intimidated, photos edited. Her stomach turned, but her will hardened. She taught herself data forensics, learned encryption, bought a burner laptop, worked 18-hour days in between hospital visits and overnight shifts at a grocery store just to pay rent. Her hands trembled. Her chest felt like it was caving in. But she kept going. And then she found it. A sealed internal review file mistakenly stored in an open directory. It listed dozens of abuse complaints against a single officer, Sergeant Miller, stretching back over 7 years. Most involved minors. All were dismissed. The file had one line scrawled at the bottom. Per directive, no further IA review. Noelle felt sick. She printed it, took it to the precinct, slid it across the desk to a captain she'd spoken to once before. His face went pale. He took the paper, stood, left the room. 15 minutes passed. Then 2 officers entered. "Miss Alvarez, you'll need to come with us." She stood slowly, blood pounding. "Why?" They didn't answer. They didn't have to. She'd crossed a line. They took her to a back room. No cameras. No clock. They told her she was interfering with an active investigation, that she could be charged with cyber intrusion, even fraud. They said if she kept digging, she might not see her brother again. Then they let her go. Just like that, a warning, wrapped in a smile. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat in the hallway outside Matteo's door, knees tucked to her chest, crying so softly it barely made a sound. But in her silence, something shifted. She realized they weren't just protecting themselves. They were protecting each other. A chain. A brotherhood. And the only way to break it was to snap the link they feared most: exposure. So she made a choice. She wasn't going to file more complaints. She was going to go public. She compiled a report, a 128-page dossier titled "Suppressed: A Pattern of Systemic Abuse and Protection." She emailed it to 5 journalists, 2 civil rights attorneys, and 1 local news anchor who'd once covered a protest at the same apartment complex Matteo was taken from. Then she waited. Days passed. Silence. Then one night her phone buzzed. A message. "We need to talk. In person. Urgent." It was the reporter. They met in a diner outside the city. He slid into the booth, eyes heavy. "What you sent me. It's real, but nobody wants to run it." Noelle's heart dropped. "Why?" "They're scared. This goes high. Like city council high. You could get someone killed if this comes out." Her voice cracked. "What about my brother?" He looked away. "I'm sorry." But she didn't stop. She posted the report herself. Blog, Reddit, Twitter, everywhere. At first, just a few shares. Then hundreds. Then thousands. Comments flooded in. Some supportive, some vile. Then came the threats. Voicemails. Messages. One night she came home to find her door kicked in. Matteo hiding in the closet. She packed a bag, took him to a shelter under a fake name. Told him it was temporary, but she knew better. They moved every 3 days. She changed her hair, burned her clothes, got rid of her phone. She carried a flash drive on a chain around her neck, the full report, untouched. Every time she touched it, she reminded herself, this is why. For Matteo. For the others. And then, like lightning, it happened. A podcast picked up her report, a nationally syndicated one. They called her the Anonymous Angel. Within 48 hours, mainstream media was on fire. News vans outside the precinct. Lawsuits filed, internal affairs raided, and then arrests. Real ones. Sergeant Miller, 2 lieutenants, a clerk who'd been erasing files. The city was shaken. The mayor held a press conference promising reforms, a task force. And somewhere, in the shadows, Noelle wept, not out of joy, but exhaustion. They offered to name her, to let her claim the spotlight. She refused. This isn't about fame, she said. It's about healing. Matteo finally started to speak again. Quiet words, short sentences. But they were his. And when he smiled for the first time in months, she broke down, fell to the floor sobbing, because she realized she'd done it. Not perfectly, not painlessly, but she'd brought truth to light. She returned to her apartment one day, now repaired, painted. The locks changed. There was a note on her table. Handwritten. We see you. We thank you. Keep going. No name, just courage. And now, if you're listening, you know the truth. You know what Noelle Alvarez endured, what she risked, what she lost, and what she gave back. She didn't hold a sign. She didn't lead a march. She fought in the quiet, in the dark, alone. For her brother, for justice, for every voice that couldn't scream loud enough. And if her story touched you, if her fight moved something inside your chest, we ask one thing. Drop a comment. Say her name. Let Noelle know she's not invisible. That she matters. That what she did meant something. Smash that like button if you believe survivors shouldn't have to become warriors to be believed. And subscribe, because stories like Noelle's deserve to be heard, shared, protected. The system tried to silence her, but you can amplify her truth. Are you with her? Let her know in the comments below. They said Malik Thompson disappeared, like he just vanished off the face of Atlanta. But the truth was, Malik didn't vanish. He was erased. Erased by a system that labeled him a problem before he could become a person. At 17, he was a top student, scholarship-bound, writing poetry on napkins during lunch breaks and teaching his younger cousins how to survive police stops. He had dreams, big ones, community organizer, public defender, a voice for the unheard. But one summer night, everything changed. He was walking home from his aunt's house, hoodie up, headphones in, when a squad car screeched to a halt beside him. 2 officers jumped out. No warning, no questions, just fists, knees, cuffs. They said he fit the description. He said he was just walking. They didn't listen. The arrest report said he resisted. The hospital report said he had a fractured rib and a concussion. By the time his mother found him in holding, his face was swollen beyond recognition, and his eyes, those bright, ambitious eyes, held something hollow, something shattered. He was charged with assaulting an officer, even though surveillance later showed he never swung. But it didn't matter. They offered a plea deal. 2 years probation if he admitted guilt. He refused. He had principles. They upped the pressure. He lost his scholarship. His school suspended him pending investigation. His friends stopped answering his texts. And suddenly, Malik was no longer a student. No longer a voice, just a name on a docket. The court dragged on, month after month. His public defender barely made eye contact. Meanwhile, the officers who beat him were promoted. One was even given a Community Impact Award. Malik tried to stay afloat, took a job at a warehouse, packed boxes for 12 hours a day, slept on a friend's couch because his mom's apartment got evicted after she missed work to attend court hearings. The world kept pushing, and Malik kept standing, until the night his little brother Zion called crying, saying the same cops who beat Malik were now patrolling near his middle school, pointing at him, laughing. Malik snapped, not in rage, but in purpose. He started documenting everything, dates, names, patterns. He kept a journal, every page a cry for help that no one heard. Then one night he went to the courthouse and waited outside until sunrise, holding a sign that said, "I'm still here. I still matter." No media, no crowds, just a young black man in the shadow of a building that broke him. Someone snapped a photo, posted it online. It went viral. Malik didn't smile in the picture. He didn't raise a fist. He just stood, defiant, alone. That silence shook people. Reporters came. Advocates showed up. But so did threats. Death threats, hate mail, DMs calling him a liar, a thug, a fraud. The system was cracking, and the pushback was brutal. Then came the fire. One night, Malik returned to his mom's new apartment, barely furnished, barely lit, and found it burning. Arson, the firefighters said. No suspects, no investigation, just ashes. His mom collapsed in grief. Malik stood in the rubble, holding a charred notebook that used to be his journal. That night, something inside him died. The boy who believed in change gave way to the man who had nothing left to lose. He moved underground, stayed off the grid, recorded secret interviews with other young men who had stories like his, stories of abuse, of silence, of survival. He compiled them into a film, raw, unfiltered, titled simply The Erased. He uploaded it anonymously. Within days, it was everywhere. The city couldn't ignore it anymore. The DA's office launched an inquiry. One of the officers who beat Malik was caught falsifying another report. Malik was contacted to testify, but he didn't show, because by then, Malik had already disappeared again, not in fear, but in exhaustion. You see, Malik had given everything, his future, his safety, his name. He'd carried the pain of being ignored, of watching justice sidestep his humanity. And when the world finally listened, it was too late to give him back what it stole. He was last seen boarding a Greyhound bus, hoodie up, journal in hand, bound for a city where maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't have to fight to breathe. Some say he's mentoring youth now. Others say he changed his name. A few believe he'll come back when the system's ready to receive him whole. But wherever he is, know this: Malik Thompson didn't vanish. He was forced into the shadows so his truth could shine in the light. And if you're reading this, if you feel the weight of what he endured, drop a comment below. Let Malik know his voice mattered. Hit that like button if his pain stirred something in you, because the world may forget names, but we remember the ones who stood even when the ground was shaking. Malik didn't ask to be a symbol. He just wanted to be seen. Let's show him we see him now. Let's make sure he was never truly erased. Her name is Amina West, and what she lived through would have broken most people. Not because she was weak, but because the system was designed to crush people like her. Strong, black, brilliant, and unafraid to speak when silence was safer. Amina was a 32-year-old civil rights investigator. Sharp suit, sharper mind, the kind who asked questions no one wanted to answer. She uncovered patterns of racial profiling in housing developments, abuse of power in school policing, and data showing eviction rates were highest in neighborhoods where tenants looked like her. She fought like hell to expose it, wrote reports, testified, showed up at city council meetings when her presence made people shift uncomfortably in their seats. But then came the case, the one that flipped her world inside out. A family of 5, wrongfully evicted, no notice, no record. When she dug deeper, she found redacted leases, falsified court filings, and a trail of bribes that led straight to a judge's desk. She reported it, sent the findings up the chain, but instead of action, she got silence. A week later, her office was restructured, her badge deactivated, her computer wiped. Overnight, Amina went from respected investigator to persona non grata. She didn't even get to pack her own desk. Security handed her a box with none of her files inside. And worse, the families she fought for started calling her phone in tears. "They're back, Amina. We're being evicted again." That's when she realized this wasn't just systemic. This was targeted. This was personal. She tried to go public, reached out to every journalist, every legal aid contact, even her old mentor. They all replied with some version of, "We're sorry, we can't touch this." She was radioactive now, a threat to careers, to reputations, to the comfortable status quo, and as her income dried up and her savings drained, she had to move into her sister's spare room with nothing but 3 boxes and the shirt on her back. She applied to over 40 jobs. No callbacks. Her resume was impeccable, but her name had been blacklisted. Whisper networks are louder than justice. Depression hit like a flood. Some mornings she couldn't get out of bed. Others, she'd sit at the window, watching people go on with their lives while she silently screamed inside, "I was just trying to help." But what do you do when doing the right thing costs you everything? Then came the final blow. One day, she got a letter in the mail. Pending investigation for breach of confidentiality. Amina's heart dropped. Not only had they fired her, they were framing her. The same people who buried her report were now accusing her of leaking it. She stared at the letter for hours. Didn't eat, didn't speak. Just sat there, wondering if she'd become what they feared most. Someone no one believed anymore. But somewhere deep inside her, something stirred. A memory. Her grandmother's voice, whispering, "Even when they block the road, you lay bricks." And Amina did. Brick by brick, she rebuilt her fight. She wrote the full story. Every detail, every document, every dirty deal. She posted it to a blog called Bricks of Truth. It caught fire. At first, just a few clicks, then a few hundred, then tens of thousands. People started asking questions, tagging local news, demanding answers. Hashtags started trending. Justice for Amina. We Believe West. A local journalist picked up her story, then another. And then the story made national headlines. Amina West, the whistleblower who wouldn't stay buried. She still lives with the scars, the unpaid bills, the fear that they might try to twist another lie. But something changed. Strangers began sending her messages. "You made me believe again." Because of you, I spoke up at work. Your courage gave me the strength to leave my abusive landlord. She realized she hadn't just saved a family. She'd lit a fire that couldn't be smothered. Her voice became a rally cry. She was invited to speak at panels, universities, even Congress. But she kept saying the same thing. This isn't about me. It's about what they tried to bury, and why we can't let them. So if you're hearing this, if Amina's story lit something inside you, drop a comment below. Let her know she's not fighting alone. Hit that like button right now if you believe truth is louder than silence. Share this story if you've ever felt like your voice didn't matter, because Amina proved it does. This world tried to erase her, but she carved her name in brick. And if she's still standing after all that, we can stand with her. No one could figure out exactly what Evelyn James had done. But whatever it was, it had every major health corporation whispering her name like a curse, and every quiet hospital hallway watching her like a ghost had entered the building. At first glance, she was just a soft-spoken oncology nurse in her early 40s, the kind of woman who remembered every patient's birthday and brought fresh soup to those too weak to chew. But behind those tired brown eyes and soft blue scrubs was a secret so wild, so unbelievable, it didn't just bend the rules. It broke the system that wrote them. Because Evelyn didn't just care for patients. She found something. Something no one could explain. Something no one wanted to be true. It started with the dog. A rescue mutt named Finley, half Labrador, half shepherd, all nerves and loyalty, who she'd found limping behind the hospital loading dock during a thunderstorm. He wasn't special, just sad and cold and trembling. She took him in, gave him a blanket, a name, a home. But within weeks of living with her, something strange started happening. Finley would act different around certain patients. Patients who looked fine on paper. Patients whose tests said remission, recovery, clear. But Finley would whimper near them, sniff their clothes, sit by their beds, and refuse to leave. And every time he did, within a month that patient would relapse, every single time. At first, Evelyn thought it was coincidence. Nurses are trained to doubt instinct, but Finley's behavior was too specific, too consistent, too loud to ignore. She started keeping a journal. And when the pattern hit 6 out of 6 patients, she ran tests. Secret ones. Swapped samples. Checked biomarkers. And what she found chilled her to her bones. Early-stage recurrence in patients whose scans had cleared them. It was like Finley knew before the machines did. That discovery could have changed everything. It should have. But Evelyn didn't report it, not right away, because she knew what systems did to people who raised impossible truths, especially people like her. Black, middle-aged, working class. She remembered what happened to a colleague who questioned the cancer trial protocols last year. Quietly reassigned, then gone. So, she waited. Researched. Trained Finley. Built a private case file. And when she had 13 patients' worth of proof, she brought it to her department head. Not a press conference, not a whistleblower claim. Just quiet, professional, careful. And that's when everything went wrong. Within days, she was pulled from rotation. Told her emotional attachment to patients had caused a breach in care. She was suspended pending internal review. Her locker was cleaned out, her access badge deactivated. And Finley, gone. Taken from her apartment while she was at a disciplinary hearing, the locks mysteriously changed when she came home. The police said it was probably a break-in. No signs of forced entry, no suspects, just vanished. But Evelyn knew. Someone had taken him. Someone knew what he was capable of. And that's when Evelyn did the unthinkable. She went rogue, dug deeper, broke into the medical records archive at midnight using a backup keycard she wasn't supposed to keep. stole raw biopsy data, cross-referenced Finley's alerts with missed diagnoses, and what she found buried inside the system made her breath catch. Multiple flagged reports showing potential recurrence that had been manually marked as resolved. Dozens of them. Suppressed data, possibly manipulated to keep survival stats high for a new experimental treatment rollout. If she was right, this wasn't medical error. This was profit over lives, reputation over recovery. And Finley had sniffed it out, literally. Evelyn knew she couldn't stay quiet now. But going public would mean losing everything, her license, her home, maybe even her safety. Still, she couldn't let it go. So she reached out to a retired journalist she once met during a hospital fundraiser. Gave him everything, under one condition. He didn't release her name. He published it as an anonymous exposé. The dog who detected cancer, before the scans, and why the hospital silenced the truth. The article blew up overnight, shared millions of times. Talk shows debated it. Patients demanded rechecks. The hospital launched a PR campaign denying everything. But behind the scenes, they scrambled. Audits were triggered. Whistleblower hotlines overflowed. And then one morning, a box arrived at Evelyn's door. No return address. Inside, Finley. Thin, shaken, but alive. Wrapped in a red vet blanket with no note. Just his tag. And the look in his eyes said he'd seen things she never would. Now, Evelyn's name is floating around in the background. The public doesn't know her face, but whispers are building. The hospital's trying to plug holes. Investigations are ongoing. But she stays silent. Not because she's afraid, but because she's watching. Ready. Finley sits beside her every night, his nose twitching when the wrong story hits the news. She knows more may come. Retaliation. Smears. But she also knows one thing for sure. She trusted her instincts, risked everything, and chose the truth. So now we ask you, if you believe Evelyn did the right thing, drop a comment right now. Say, "I'd find the truth." If you think she saved lives when no one else would listen. Hit that like button if you think a rescue dog and a nurse with nothing but guts should be heroes in this world. Let Evelyn know she's not alone. Because when they try to erase you for uncovering the truth, the loudest support comes not from power, but from people. And Evelyn James? She risked everything. Now it's your turn to stand with her. And in the end, when the storms had passed and the scars had healed just enough to stop burning, Marcus Langston stood once again, this time not behind a bench or inside a courtroom, but on the steps of a small East Atlanta community center, surrounded by children whose laughter cut through the same streets that once whispered lies about him. He was no longer just Judge Langston. That title had been stripped, reclaimed, attacked, and finally redefined. Now he was simply Marcus, a father, a survivor, a man who had been dragged through fire by a system meant to serve him, by officers who lied, a captain who wanted him buried, and a city that turned its back until the truth screamed too loud to ignore. He'd been profiled, framed, shot at, locked up, hunted, defamed, and nearly drowned. But he'd also risen. Each time. Not because he was unbreakable, but because every time they knocked him down, his why, his daughter Nia, reached out a hand and reminded him who he was. The system nearly stole everything from him, but it couldn't touch his purpose. And when the dust finally settled, when Captain Decker was pronounced dead and Hensley sentenced to 25 years, when the last of the dirty cops were dragged into the light, and the task force named his story as the spark behind real reform, Marcus didn't celebrate with revenge. He celebrated with rebuilding. He opened a legal literacy nonprofit, created free workshops for families to learn their rights, helped expunged records for those who'd been trapped by bad arrests. He turned his nightmare into a blueprint. And Nia? She got accepted into college with a full scholarship, criminal justice major, just like her dad once dreamed. She spoke on panels, held her own on live interviews, and told the world, "My father showed me that survival is resistance. And truth? It's a weapon." And the same couch where Marcus once crumbled under the weight of betrayal now held flyers for local tenants' rights meetings. The living room that once echoed with the sound of a brick crashing through the window now pulsed with laughter, music, and the tapping of Nia's laptop as she built her first blog post. Justice isn't just in the courtroom. It starts in your living room. The story of Marcus Langston is not just one of victory, it's one of endurance, of faith, of refusing to let hatred win. And if there's one lesson this journey leaves behind, it's this: never underestimate the quiet strength of someone who knows who they are. Systems can lie, people can betray, headlines can twist. But if you carry your truth like a flame, no matter how dark it gets, it will guide you home. If you ever feel like the world is too heavy, like no one sees what you're going through, remember Marcus. Remember how they tried to bury him with lies, and he dug his way out with courage. Remember that justice might be slow, messy, and painful, but it's still worth fighting for. And sometimes that fight isn't loud. Sometimes it's showing up, documenting everything, refusing to bow, speaking truth when your voice shakes. You don't have to wear robes or carry a badge to make a difference. Sometimes all you need is the will to not be erased. So if Marcus's story moved you, if it made you angry, hopeful, tearful, inspired, drop a comment right now. Say, "I stand with Marcus." Let the world know that stories like his matter. That truth still matters. Smash that like button if you believe in fighting back, in protecting family, in rising no matter how many times they try to crush you. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss another story like this. Because we're just getting started. We've got more truths to tell, more voices to amplify. And if you're still here, listening, feeling this in your chest, that means you're part of this too. You're the reason stories like Marcus's can't be silenced. Thank you for riding this storm with us, for believing, for standing up, and above all, for remembering.